Good morning. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Here are the stories we're following today.
Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has been granted immunity in the special counsel investigation, the January 6th probe. Ed Baxter has that story and the rest of the global news from the 960 newsroom in San Francisco. Ed?
All right. Thank you, Brian. Meadows was Trump's final chief of staff, and this means he will not be prosecuted. Sources say before the grand jury, he repeatedly told Trump that the claims of election fraud were baseless. Meadows is a central player in the investigation by Smith, investigating the claims that Trump and his allies sought to overturn the election. Now, there is more Trump trial news. We'll get there in just a couple of minutes. The House speakership has been thrown into more disarray. That was quick. Number 3, down and out. Tom Emmer has dropped his bid for speaker. Early in the day, he reportedly was 26 votes short as well. Donald Trump came in opposition. Now, former House Speaker says a core problem is not being addressed.
If you don't deal with the consequences of the 8 who worked with all the Democrats to put it in here, putting a new person up each time, we're going to be in the same place we were before.
Yeah, that, of course, is Kevin McCarthy. So what you have within the party is the Trump supporters who will not vote for anybody who voted to certify the 2020 Electoral College and those who didn't. And Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson says the effort to get the Democrats to get a speaker elected does not seem that will happen.
What's in it for Democrats at this point to join the fight or to try to solve the fight for the Republicans? There's an old political adage, that when your enemy is drowning, throw him an anchor, or just watch. And I think at this point, the scroll of concessions that Republicans would have to make to Democrats to get them on board right now is impossibly long.
So the mess is still a mess. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says Israel needs to pull back from its bombing campaign, says while Hamas attacks are unwarranted.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation.
Meanwhile, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, says Guterres needs to step down.
Mr. Secretary General, the UN was established to prevent atrocities, to prevent such atrocities like the barbaric atrocities that Hamas committed. But the UN is failing.
Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen has canceled today's meetings with Guterres. While the air attacks persist, their efforts by the U.S. and other Israeli allies to try everything before going in. Bloomberg's Oliver Crook in Tel Aviv says today even
dropping flyers on Gaza saying basically that if you have any information with phone numbers and all this, and this sort of thing about where hostages may be being held, offering money, saying that there will be safe passage and trying to ensure the safety of those who basically have any information on where these hostages are being held within Gaza.
And the Pentagon is sending Israel the U.S. Army's 2 batteries of Iron Dome radar, command posts, and interceptors to boost the nation's defense. A Bloomberg source says it isn't known how soon or when at this point. Former Trump fixer Michael Cohen on the stand today in the New York civil suit against Trump valuations. Cohen testifying that he followed Trump's orders, and as did the rest of the team. Trump now going into court.
He's a proven liar, as you know. He's a felon. Served a lot of time for lying, and we're going to just go in and see, and I think you'll see that for yourself.
And Cohen?
This is not about Donald Trump versus Michael Cohen or Michael Cohen versus Donald Trump. This is about accountability.
The judge will make the determination in the suit. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, and this is Bloomberg. Brian.
Ed, thank you. I'm Brian Curtis, along with Doug Krisner, and we look now at some of the top business stories of the hour. Alphabet reported third quarter revenue and profit from its cloud business that missed analyst estimates. And this raises some concerns as investors were looking to the cloud to take the lead on company growth. Alphabet is the third largest player in the cloud market after Amazon and Microsoft. We hear now from Bloomberg's Mandeep Singh.
Cloud, a little bit of a letdown, but not surprised given, everyone right now is talking about generative AI and they are kind of making their 2024 plans. It hasn't really translated into cloud revenue.
Mandeep Singh. The cloud results marred an otherwise healthy report. Third quarter sales and profit beat analysts' expectations. Alphabet shares down around about 6.5% in late trading.
We also heard from Microsoft after the bell. The company reported first quarter revenue rose 13%. So we're talking top line now of $56.5 billion. That was above estimates, and it represents Microsoft's strongest sales gain in 6 quarters. The company's new artificial intelligence products seem to be prompting corporate customers to spend. Here's James Kakmak. He is tech analyst at Clockwise Capital.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing there is that you continue to see resilience on the cloud side, while the legacy parts of their business anniversary the tougher comps and come out stronger. So, and at the same time, while being able to manage the bottom line. And obviously, it's a juggernaut. It's 10%, of the Qs, and so it's a big weight, important stock for the market. But the main thing is that the growth sector factor continues to be where the money will likely continue to flow and coming out of the value area.
James Kakmak there from Clockwise Capital. Brian, right now I've got shares in Microsoft up 3.5% in late trading.
Yeah, actually did quite well in after hours and going the other direction from Google. Well, Texas Instruments was also out with its report. It had a disappointing revenue forecast for the third quarter. The story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It indicates that demand remains sluggish for a broad range of electronic components, including industrial equipment. TI said revenue in the fourth quarter will be $3.93 to $4.27 billion. Now, that compares with an average analyst estimate of $4.49 billion. The outlook bodes poorly for a chip industry that is trying to recover from a punishing slowdown. Texas Instruments has the broadest list of customers in the semiconductor industry, making its forecast a bellwether for demand across the economy. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
We go to Snap.
And we're seeing shares down 4.8% in late trading.
Pardon me. We go to Snap next. The company returned to revenue growth for the third quarter after 2 periods of declines. The company has spent much of the year working to revamp its ad business for its Snapchat app. Already that app has more than 5 million subscribers. Separately, Snap said it's seen a large number of brand-focused ad campaigns pause during the third quarter after the start of the Israel-Hamas war, and it's now expecting this delay to continue into the fourth quarter. Right now, shares in Snap little changed in late U.S. trading.
Well, China is stepping up support for the economy with massive debt issuance. Bloomberg's Joanne Wong has the story from Hong Kong.
China's legislature approved a plan to raise the fiscal deficit ratio for 2023 to about 3.8% of GDP. Xinhua said the plan would include issuing additional sovereign debt worth $137 billion in the fourth quarter. The additional debt would be used to support disaster relief and construction. China has rarely adjusted its budget mid-year. The last time was in 2008 in the aftermath of the Sichuan earthquake. The latest budget revision shows that top leaders are concerned about China's economic outlook. Just yesterday, President Xi Jinping made what's thought to be his first ever visit to the central bank since he became president. In Hong Kong, I'm Joanne Wong, Bloomberg Radio.
Again, Brian Curtis and Doug Krisner, and this is Bloomberg. Our guest is Eric Wasson, Bloomberg congressional reporter, who's right outside the room where they are strategizing on what comes next. Eric, thanks very much. So this is really difficult for Republicans, but the House Majority Whip, Tom Emmer, down, out of the race. It's the third speaker designee that has sort of tumbled out of this. I want to know procedurally, setting aside the embarrassment of all of this for the moment, procedurally, what comes next?
Well, right now they're meeting in what's called a candidates forum. According to the House Republican rules, every time they run for have a speaker race, they've got to meet in a candidates forum where they have a chance to give speeches and then also answer questions from the members. This happened last night where Emmer and others answered questions, and then there were the votes to say Emmer won. And then, after 26 Republicans came out against Emmer and Trump went on Truth Social to really bash him, he dropped out. So now we're back to the candidates forum. There's a bunch of candidates who have jumped in again, all from the South. I'd note all men, and they are now presenting their case to the conference.
It appears as though, according to their aides, Representative Kevin Hern of Oklahoma and Mike Johnson of Louisiana are two of the prime candidates now seeking speakership. Is this likely what it's going to come down to, one of these two gentlemen?
I would say Johnson's probably the front runner. He got the most votes, 97 votes, when he was up against Emmer. But, Hearn is a strong candidate. He's the Republican Study Committee chairman. That's the largest caucus in the Republican Party, conservative, but not as conservative as the House Freedom Caucus, which are really the ultra-conservatives. That group is running two people, Mark Green of Tennessee and also Byron Donalds of Florida, who ran before. So it kind of splits their vote a little bit. There's a couple surprise entrances into the race. Chuck Fleischman of Tennessee, he's an appropriator, energy spending panel chairman. He would sort of probably be representing the appropriations, more traditional establishment view. He's jumped in. And then Roger Williams of Texas, also a very minor figure in the House, but someone that could, small business committee person, who could potentially, again, emerge as a consensus candidate if everyone else deadlocks.
How facetious is it to just say, why don't they just ask Donald Trump who he wants in there?
I think Trump will probably stay out of this. He had a personal animosity towards Emmer because Emmer wouldn't vote to overturn the election. There were other, spats over the years. Emmer also had voted to basically preserve gay marriage rights, something that conservatives didn't forgive him for. All the candidates that are in there now all voted with Trump to overturn the election, so I don't think he's really going to care too much between them or to weigh in. I mean, I could be wrong. But I don't see him any of these candidates generate the same opposition that Emmer did in Trump world.
One of the things that we're trying to understand vis-a-vis the market is whether Treasury market in particular is concerned about moving up against a deadline for funding that would necessitate a government shutdown. Is that being talked about? Is the GOP feeling any pressure to find a speaker quickly?
Definitely the moderates, we hear that them saying, Kelly Armstrong, a moderate from North Dakota, said it's all about avoiding a shutdown. That's the real deadline here, getting up against that November 18th deadline. When Congress has to act, it will act, but it will dither, procrastinate, infight until that very moment. This is decision by committee. In some ways, that's how democracy works, but this is particularly egregious and disorganized compared to my 15 years out here watching this. They really need to get this act together as a prelude to figuring out how to meet that deadline.
How much power does the Speaker pro tem, Patrick McHenry, have at the moment?
It's a matter of controversy. Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker, was just out here saying he already has the power. He should just start acting. McHenry has interpreted that he doesn't. And interestingly, his actions so far, the way he's acted has sort of set a precedent. And if they try to force it, how he decides will set a precedent in the rules as to exactly how much power he has. Now, they could simply elect him Speaker pro tem. There has been that long history of temporary speakers. For example, when Newt Gingrich went out of town in 1996 to Dave Murphy, Brown in Hollywood, they had one. She signed a big telecom law. This has happened before, but he's been reluctant to embrace this idea, and others felt like they need the lack of an empowered Speaker pro tem to get this real speaker vote going. The longer this drags out, the more that becomes a possibility.
Eric, what are we hearing from the Democrats this time?
Democrats have indicated, including Dean Phillips of Minnesota, that he might be willing to support or help out Tom Emmer, if they, in exchange for some concessions like funding the government at sort of negotiated levels. That was met with some resistance from others Democrats. They would be willing to do some deal. It's not quite power sharing. They realize that's probably unrealistic given the U.S. system. But more ability to bring their priorities to the floor for up or down vote. But they have not been given any sort of deal on that. So they're sort of waiting, saying, we'll help out, but we need to get something for this. And it could come to that, but I think that's probably the third most likely option after the House Republicans finding a consensus person or McHenry getting some kind of temporary power to move a spending bill.
And what are the sorts of deals that are happening on the Republican side?
I think it's really, there's no deals right now. I mean, there could be deals. If we see a nominee come out in voting as soon as tonight that doesn't have the full 217, he could go the same route of trying to get sort of backroom deals that Jordan did. Jim Jordan had more of a personal problem or legacy with some of the more mainstream Republicans, having spent years calling them Republicans in name only and pointing out their flaws. Some of these other men in there, like Mike Johnson and Kevin Hart, don't really have that history. Someone describes them as, the same menu but different waiter. They just don't have that antagonistic history, so they might be able to pull it off where Jordan didn't. But I see it sort of potentially going down that road in the next couple of days.
Very quickly, Eric, do you have a timeline for what the procedure will be going forward?
Well, they're having this candidate forum now, and then after that, some members are saying they're going to vote tonight. Maybe they're just too exhausted to do that. But we have seen before, especially it's very common on the Senate side, that Congress will go into the midnight hours to resolve things, hoping that exhaustion wears down people. So I'm not ruling that out. It could be a late night here on Capitol Hill.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, your morning brief on the stories making news from Hong Kong to Singapore and Wall Street.
Look for us on your podcast feed every day on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcast.
You can also listen live each day on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM Channel 119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Join us again tomorrow for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.